Hi, everyone. There are operator turned venture capitalists, but how many operator turned venture capitalists become an operator again? Today, we are going to talk to Boston's one of the favorite VCs on SheVC. Welcome to SheVC. I'm your founder and host, Gayatri Sarkar. An amazing venture capitalist from Boston area who is an operating partner at Accomplice. It's none other than Sarah Downey. Super excited to welcome you, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes. And I want to tell everybody, Sarah is the reason for which I have a video blogging, because I was a little bit chicken about it. And I was like, no, I'll just do blogging or audio blogging. And she influenced me like, no, you should have a video blogging, right?
Yeah, I think it adds a lot, even though I'm an introvert, and so a lot of the time I prefer to just do audio only, but in this case, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yes. Yeah, that's the thing I love about Sarah. She's very open about certain things. And one of the things, if you are following Sarah, is like her blog. She has amazing blogs about how to invest, and also about angel investing, how the entrepreneurs can navigate in the world of investments. So they're a must read for any founders. So one of,
Thanks.
oh, you're welcome. So Sarah was a lawyer turned a startup operator, and then again became an operator from a VC. So tell us a little bit about this journey. And we were talking about this before, and you were like, I have 3 jobs. So tell us
Yeah.
about your 3 jobs.
So right now I have 3 jobs, which are first, I'm an operating partner at Accomplice. So Accomplice is an early stage VC firm here in Boston. We do anywhere from like pre-seed to Series A and beyond checks. But we like to come in early and then stay involved through the life cycle of companies. So I'm an operating partner there, which is kind of a new thing for us. And to break this down a little bit, I think when you look at VCs, there's this expectation that you're supposed to know everything and you're supposed to do everything and you're supposed to be good at all of it. And that means sourcing companies from the earliest of stages to helping build those companies, hiring executives, dealing with founder conflicts, building through the growth stage all the way up to pre-IPO and beyond. And like, you're supposed to know how to do all of that. And newsflash, I don't think anybody does. Even the best people have areas that they prefer or are better at. So what we're trying to do to accomplish with this new model is to say, here's the stack of venture capital. What pieces of it do you, as Accomplice investment team, what do you want? And what are you good at? And so I'm basically like from the early stage, once we're in, to about growth stage, that's where I'm helping. So I'm helping to build these companies. What that means is I'm not out anymore going to every single networking event, answering every single email pitch, trying to source these deals. Like I will occasionally source them, but I'm really not actively doing that. And that's actually been a big stress reliever, I think, because like not having the FOMO hanging over you at every second that like, oh my God, I'm going to not take this meeting, it's going to be the next Facebook, has been really big for me because I just don't think I'm built for that, and that's okay. Um, so I'm a build operating partner at Accomplice. That's one of the jobs. The second job is that I'm still angel investing a lot, and some of those deals have become Accomplice deals, so that I'm looking at things, making investments there. I've made like 30 angel investments at this point. And
Awesome.
then the last one is that I'm a co-founder with my friend Isabella Patton in her company Atris, which that's the umbrella company, but the things that we're building are mobile apps. And so the first one is a mobile app around the Enneagram, which is if you're not familiar with it, it's a personality typing system. It's kind of like Myers-Briggs or maybe like Strength Finder, but in my opinion is just like invaluable for how accurate it is. Like it's not astrology. It's not like, 7 people read it and 5 of them feel like it might apply to them. This is like, if you're being honest with yourself and you read, there's 9 different types, and then each 9 type has a subtype. So like I'm an 8 with a 9 wing, for example. So if this is done correctly, you should be able to read your type and your wing and be like, oh, wow, that is me. There's no way that it's not me. And like, these are uncomfortable truths about myself. So there's a lot of tests online. You could Google it. I mean, it's really blowing up and being used in a lot of places, but we felt like there really wasn't an accurate test. So Isabella has a data science background. We both have psychology backgrounds, and we were like, let's make a test that's accurate, and then let's build an app that contains all this information that people can use with their spouses, co-founders, friends, etc., to just make themselves and their relationships better. So we were literally building that from this house. She lives upstairs, so it's a
Wow.
family business. Yeah.
Love that. And I like what you said about psychology. I have not studied psychology, and I feel like psychology plays a huge role. And nowadays, I'm trying to study behavioral economics further. And I feel when it comes to terms of investing, when it comes to terms of the dynamics that gets played in effect when you're sitting at the board roles also. So before I go and talk about Atreus, I would love to know a little bit about your angel investing. So how can entrepreneurs reach out to you? Tell us some of the companies that you have invested in. These are some of very unique companies that you have invested.
Yeah, they're a mix. So if people want to get in touch with me, you can just do Sarah at sarahAdowney.com. That I'll get that for anything that it's a catch-all. It works. And that's Sarah with an H, you know. So some of the angel investments that I've done that I find most interesting, one is called Humaning, and it is a platform to control human actors as though you're in a video game. So
Oh,
if you think about like how, bespoke and customized a lot of content has become, like YouTube or Netflix, etc., like the expectations that viewers have is higher and higher around how is this tailored to me and how can I see exactly what I want. And so this company is trying to enable people to sit at home with like a streaming device. We don't exactly know what the control mechanisms will be yet, but they can say, you know what, I want to immerse myself in like a heist
ooh,
where I'm basically controlling a bunch of actors who are in real time at a physical space, kind of acting out wherever you want this heist to go within reason. Like nobody can set each other on fire or anything, we hope. So that's one that I think is interesting. Another one that I just did is a company that's like a social network for just audio. So it's kind of like you're sending each other little snippets of audio, and you have stories, like Instagram has stories, but it's audio only. And then when you have your AirPods in, you can opt into those things just coming in and out seamlessly. So like, if you're a person who lives in your AirPods, you can kind of be connected to your network all the time just through voice commands. And I think that's an interesting type of augmented reality, is like the
yes.
audio only augmented reality. So I think that's a cool one. But I mean, generally, like, I think one of the most important things to me is the people. Like you were talking about psychology being important in all this.
Yes.
So I really care about the person and their interest level. And then, to a somewhat lesser degree, I care about what they're actually building. And I think a lot of angel investors will look at things differently from venture capital, but not for me, because I kind of have the same lens for angel as I do for VC, which is it should have the potential to be really big, in
Yeah.
part because I want some of these to translate into Accomplice companies, because it's like
Mm.
it's good for them and it's good for me if I can say, hey, you're raising your seed, maybe we can do that. So I tend to look at things that are kind of like big and crazy and potentially ridiculous. So
Love that. Love that. So coming from there, your love for sci-fi, your social media says you're a 17-year-old boy in the guise of an adult female. So tell
yeah.
me about how your love for sci-fi and your idiosyncrasy, which I love the most about you, helped you prepare in the world of venture capital.
Well, I feel like Nintendo 64 has a lot to do with my life today. Actually, I'll show you so here's my living room. So I've got like the dual gaming
Ooh,
situation. I have two TVs. I have like every console you can have. And then I have a neon Nintendo 64 light up there, which is, I guess probably not in everyone's living room, but I think gaming was and still is my route into what I do now. My parents were not big fans of me having gaming systems when I grew up. Like, they were pretty strict about, you got to do your homework, you have to practice your instrument for an hour every day. I did sports, I did all that shit, but like the thing that I loved going to my friend's house, Bryn Goldbeck. I used to go to her house and she had all the coolest stuff before anybody did. So she had a Nintendo 64, she had a Super Nintendo, and I would go and we'd have sleepovers and I'd play endlessly. And I remember when she first got the Nintendo 64, it was like seeing 3D was like a religious experience. I just could not believe how amazing. Mario 64, I was like, oh my God. And my parents were not sold on the idea of that. So I ended up selling a Beanie Baby on eBay, which is like the most 90s story in the world. Like selling a Beanie Baby on eBay to get an N64, but that's what I did. And I mean, I loved that console, and I've never stopped loving games ever since then. And I really think that, like, having curiosity about games and playing them and being in this community, which often involves a lot of like technical people, developers, like the nerd community is definitely my community. And it just so happens that a lot of those people are startup people. And so I kind of like seamlessly have the same language of a lot of those people and a lot of the same interests. And, it was through gaming that I was curious about other parts of tech. So I really do think Nintendo has a lot to do with it for
That's
me.
Great. I love that fact, how you utilized your love for gaming into the world of investments. And obviously you're investing in a lot of gaming companies. So as an early stage investor, we always see, as you said, that I want some of my companies where I invested, they to become an Accomplice portfolio. And so there are a lot of false positives in the private investing market, and there are a lot of true signals, false signals. So what are the do's and don'ts you find for an early stage companies, and also as an investor, in identifying such patterns, especially when you are investing at an angel investment and also a seed round? So what do you think as an investor from your side, what are the do's and don'ts, not from an entrepreneur side, but from an investor side?
Oh, there are so many, and so much of it is personal, and so much of it we get wrong. I mean, that's the caveat. Like I think if you're a founder and you're getting introduced to the world of VCs, you're like, what is this universe? Who are these people? They have perfect clarity on, they only advertise their wins, and all of us have far more losses than we have wins. It's just not cool or easy to talk about them. So that, with all that said, I think we'd have to rely on pattern matching around what has worked and what hasn't. I mean, for me, the biggest red flags and green flags are always about people. So, like getting just the wrong feeling about somebody, like they are in this for the wrong reason. They're in it for money. Like you have to, everybody's sort of in it for the money. Yes. Like, this is not a nonprofit. We wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't some money involved. But like, primarily being in it for the money is a huge no. Being in it for the ego is also bad, because as a founder, you're going to have a spotlight on you, and it's your responsibility to create a work environment that is safe and welcoming for people. It's a big responsibility. It's not just like, here's $2 million, build a product in a vacuum. It's kind of like, here's $2 million, build a culture that will affect people's lives who you employ. So I really think that as investors, you have a duty to help gatekeep and prevent assholes from founding companies where they ruin people's lives. Like, you have to employ the right people. So, I mean, some of the cases where I've made poor investment decisions were when I've thought, oh, the product is just so strong, the market is just so strong, that I'm going to overlook that this guy has a huge ego, or that this woman is not, she doesn't feel like she's full-time in this. and she's
Mm.
kind of squirrely when I ask her about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then like, guess what? The check goes in and she's not full time. And it's those kind of things. I think you really need to trust your gut.
Yeah.
And you know, other issues, obviously lying. I think there's a big difference between marketing your company, especially in an early conversation with the VC where you want to hype them up and get them excited to see the next card,
Yeah.
and lying about your metrics, lying about your market size. And there's a difference between, you know, honesty, like straightforward honesty, saying we had 50 million in sales and saying we had 5 when it was
Mm-hmm.
5.
That's huge
And then
difference.
yeah, versus like intellectual honesty, which I think is also important. And that's, are you actually being honest with yourself when you
Mm.
say, you know, like I've had people in board meetings say, we are the leader in this space. And it's kind of like, we're all sitting around here like, but you're not. You know, we're trying to help you get there, but unless you're admitting to yourself that you have somewhere to go, we
Yes.
have to just be honest about the facts that are presented to us. And I think there's a
Yes.
lot of like weird puffery or optimism that doesn't actually help the business. Another like tactical red flag that I see a lot, maybe it's because we're in Boston and there's a lot of universities here, but
Yeah.
there are often teams that will come in with like 5 or more founders who all have sort of similar non-technical titles. So if you're like a really early company and you barely have a product and you have a chief strategy officer, a chief marketing officer, a CEO, a co-CEO, not a good sign.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all you're like, let's see what you can actually do before you assign yourself,
Yeah.
you know, executive titles.
Yeah. That's true. I think yeah, I'm not surprised what you said, because there are a lot of people there haven't done anything. There's an idea and there's obviously a lot of people playing around trying to have a company. So
Yeah.
venture capital is one industry, and I feel like one of the, you know, oldest industry that has not been disrupted as such. And you are a founder of Rave Boston, and as people like you are seeing, you know, movements that are coming into the space, how do you see biases and prejudices that gets played in effect, especially in the past and currently where we are right now? And especially in today's world, we are saying there's so much of things that are happening outside the world, whether it's COVID-19 or the externalities that are getting played along with COVID-19, whether people of color or people coming from a minority background. So people like you who are catalysts for change and bringing certain movements, how do you look at the venture capital industry?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think with Rev Boston, one of our goals was to increase the number of female investors, because we were
Mm,
saying, you know, there, you look around, there aren't a lot of female VCs. Okay, why is that? Well, there's not a lot of female founders or
yeah,
CEOs, and then there's not a lot of female executives, and then there seems to be this drop off around the director VP level for women in startup
yes,
roles to everything else. So what we did was target the director VP level and find 20 women in Boston Tech every year at that level who have just been kicking ass and probably are not well-known names, even though they
yeah,
totally should be, and put them together in a room and bring some of the best resources and speakers in the world to them. It not to say, hey, you need to become an investor, but
yeah,
if you want to explore this, or even if you wanted to know what the path was, here it is. Or like, here's how to become an angel investor. It doesn't take a lot of money. You already have the skills to do it. Here's how you start. You know, here's how you get on a board if you want.
yeah,
A nonprofit board, for example, a for-profit board. Like, they have the skills to do this. So we were just trying to help them get there, or to found a company, you know, any of these things. And so that's one way that I personally have looked at it, and the Accomplice has been generous to fund me and basically doing whatever I want around that every year. So
love
that's
that.
nice. And you know, and then how does it play out? Well, let's see. I'm often the only woman in a board meeting. I'm
Hmm.
often the youngest woman in a board meeting, the youngest person. So like the combination of those two things is often not the most confidence inspiring thing, but you just gotta kind of get through it and sort out what are the voices in your head versus what is real. I've definitely had cases where founders came in to pitch and were super dismissive towards me, but not my male partners.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure you can relate. It's crazy that this is still happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had founders of woman-focused companies come in, shake all the male partners' hands but mine. And by
Wow.
the way, I'm the only one who like read the deck. I'm the only one who tested the product, and they take issue with me because the product was, there was like a bug or something in their live demo. And of course, I'm the only person who tried it, but it's somehow my fault as the user that
Ah,
their product isn't working on demand. But
wow.
so that's not the norm by any means, but those kinds of things definitely
Yes.
happen a
Yeah.
lot.
True. And
We're also at Accomplice. We just sponsored our 25 employees of our portfolio companies who are all women and people of color to go through this program called TLC.
mm,
And it stands for the I think it's Technology Leadership Consortium. Yeah. But Frances Fry, who's like this incredible HBS professor of strategy, who also was the person who Uber hired to fix their sexual harassment and
yeah,
cultural issues. She went to Riot Games to do the same thing. She went to WeWork to do the same thing. Like, she's fucking unbelievable.
she's
So
amazing.
this is her company, and this is her attempt to basically bring leadership development to people who traditionally haven't received it. So we sponsored that at Accomplice also. It's kind of like in the same vein of Rev. It's like, how do we find these people who are at that level where they're taking off and give them
Yeah.
what they need to be better? Um, but I don't know. It's like between Me Too and what you're seeing now with like all of the attention on racial inequality, like there is so far to go.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy that for an industry that is so focused on investing in innovative companies, the
Mm,
VC world hasn't innovated itself in a lot
yes.
of ways.
Yeah.
It's like overwhelmed. There are plenty of good VCs, right? But there's plenty of horrible VCs who are just like the white guy in the blue blazer who's going to like tell you how to run your business, who has he's only got his MBA, like has never done anything hard. So there's too much of that still. And I
Hmm.
do think we're getting away from it, especially now that like founders are the ones doing the interesting and valuable thing. Like, all we have is money. Like, we can help you more or less depending on our skill sets, but like, we have more or less dollars to give you. So I think founders realize that they have the power in this situation, and they have the right to choose who's going to be an investor and who's going to be on their cap table, because it's like a family relationship, and you shouldn't go with the douchebag who gives you an icky feeling if you could go with somebody who could give you actual value beyond
Yes,
money.
that's true. I
Sorry to
think
all the douchebags.
I think you highlighted one of the important points that I think entrepreneurs, they fail to take a look at it. The investor fit, the founder investor fit is so important, because that's a relationship, that's a marriage,
Yes.
and it's not an easy marriage. And
No.
it gets played along very ugly when you're at the board meeting. So when you talk about investing, and you especially this identifying all the patterns as an investor, obviously we talked about there's some of the bigger ideas which are so unpredictable, and sometimes those investment decisions, obviously non-consensus among partners. To invest in such unpredictable big ideas, you have to learn, you have to see things very differently, analyze market, that others are finding it non-sexy. You have I mean, when I read your blogs and when I follow you on Twitter, you read a lot. And I consider
Yeah.
completely that as something, I admire. So venture capital is not a job. It's a lifestyle, it's not like a 9 to 6 job. In weekends, you're not a
Yeah.
VC. So what are the learning habits that you have acquired being a VC, and how do you analyze like various thinking models?
Hmm. So reading a lot is definitely one of them.
Mm,
Um, Even if I'm reading something that seems like it has nothing to do with work, which I do all the time, it somehow ends up having to do with it, or it broadens my mind in a way that I didn't expect, or makes some kind of connection that is creative and useful.
Yeah.
So I really think, I feel like not enough people do that. It's
Mm.
like they burn themselves out because they think, all right, I'm a founder, time to do only founder things 24/7. And you kind of lose sight of who you are and what you need to stay human. And that applies to VCs too. So yeah, I mean, at any given time, I'm usually reading like 7 books. I'm not
Wow.
like simultaneously. It'll be, I'll read one and then I'll just feel the need to go do something else. So they're usually like psychology, science fiction, behavioral economics, true crime. Weirdly, I'm like obsessed with true crime, and then I have
Wow.
nightmares. So it's not good. But I read a lot of that stuff. Like right now, I'm reading like a textbook on business law and strategy because I'm trying
Mm.
to brush off my general counsel skills for ATRIS. But then I'm also reading Devil in the White City, which is about
Mm.
the building of the World's Fair in Chicago at the turn of the century, and then the serial killer who lived and killed among all that, because of course, have to do that. And then I have, what else? And then I'm reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography
Oh,
because
that's
like
very interesting.
he's a cool dude. He's had an
Yes.
insane life.
Yes, he had an
And
insane
like when I'm,
life.
he's like, yeah, it's just crazy to unpack what he's done and say,
Mm.
can you imagine an immigrant coming here who could barely speak English, who was at the absolute top of his game in one area, which was bodybuilding, and then he decided he was going to become a successful actor, and like to do that with all of those barriers, and then to become governor of California. Like the
Yeah.
guy is just, he's one of those rare human beings that it's like I feel like I should study him, you know?
Yeah. He is very unique. I remember one of the quote that he made that, when people are basically, struggling in gym, they're very unhappy, but I'm very happy because I am basically creating my future. And I was like,
Yeah,
wow,
he's just led it, and then he's here in the quarantine posting all these videos of him with his mini horse and his mini donkey who
I love
he
those.
has hang out in his house. It's like, what this gets, I mean, he's not a perfect human being by any means, but he's just unique in how he kind of like takes ownership of his brand and his goals, which I
Right.
think is useful.
Now, this is very interesting. I want to ask
I
you a
feel like I
very
didn't even answer your question because I took
no,
one part
you
of that.
did.
Okay, all right, good.
I want to ask you the very last question since we do not have much time. So tell us about you touched upon it a little bit about board meetings. I sit on a couple of companies board, and some are very painful and some are like easy. The entrepreneurs know what they want to
Hmm.
do. And
Yeah, I
how
feel
do you
you.
want to yeah, how do you want to approach those board meetings? Especially, what are the tips that you want to give it to the entrepreneurs? Because sometimes some board meetings are like, looks like as if they're doing a presentation, which can be done in an email.
Yeah. Well, that's a big one. I think the big one is get your stuff ready a couple days in advance. If you are having a board meeting and it is traditional, right? Get the materials out a couple days in advance so that people can review them, and then explicitly tell the board you are expected to have read and digested this before you come in. So we're going to talk. We're just going to chat about, I'm going to assume you're familiar with everything in there. And instead, we're going to talk about the next level stuff based on this, like the high level strategy things that a founder grapples with and keeps them up at night around. Are we pursuing the right strategy? Are we doing the right fundraise? Is the product worth marketing in its current form?
Yeah.
Like those kinds of things. Um, I'm of the mind that you don't need a board for a lot of companies. I think, especially the really early and very small
Yeah.
companies, like why have one? I think a lot of the reason, the answer to that question historically has been because this is the way it's always been. But when you really look at it, my thesis is that most founders and most VCs really don't like board meetings. I think the exceptions are the later stage companies. You really do need to have corporate governance and everything nailed down. But early on, I think it just wastes people's time. Like the founders want to build their companies. They don't want to spend, I mean, the amount of time that it spends to get everybody at their team, okay, you do these slides, you do these, now we need to get the numbers for the board. And then the board kind of, you go in and you just sit there and you have numbers read to you and it's boring and you don't feel like your expertise is being used. It's kind of like a shitty situation overall. So I would say if you're going to do it, make it yours. Just like with company updates, if you're a founder and you got to send out emails quarterly or whenever, more frequently, to your investors, like, do it in your style, have some personality. Like, what do you really think about what's going well and what's not going well? That's actually another point. One good thing that some of the best founders do that I've seen in board meetings is they have a slide at the very beginning that's like traffic light colors. So green, orange, red. What is going well, in my opinion? What is going okay, but we're watching it? And then what is not going well and that I need help with? Because it's nice to just frame that it at the high level so everybody knows how to process it. But I mean, like my partner Jeff at Accomplice, he's on the board of a company that just sold, merged to another one for like hundreds of millions of dollars. The board is him and the founder, and they go to dinner. Like, that is the board. And it's a super functional board, and the company's doing great because it fits that founder's personality. So I think as a founder, like, again, recognize that you have a lot more power than you think you do, and you can set this up kind of however you want within reason. Like, we're just here to help you and help the company. So it doesn't have to be this like stuffy Fortune 500 situation when that's not you and that's not your company either.
Yeah. I think I can go on for another hour and ask you 1,000 other questions, but I would like to thank you a lot for taking your time. And I don't know how busy you are for giving
That's
this.
All right. I play a lot of video games. I have 3 jobs, but I still find time to wear sweatpants and do nothing. So
thank you, Sarah, for your time. And I'm super excited to bring your stories for SheVC. And thanks a lot, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.